My name is Matt Sparazza, and we have a special PSA today.
I'm not. Wait.
My co-host, Father Sam.
Hold on, that's not fair. I wasn't expecting you to make me do the PSA just yet. I wanted to first say, like, we have.
I told
Nick
you we
Clune
were
here.
starting with
He's a fellow podcast host. He hosts the Hey Brother podcast. Nick, I'm so glad that you're here. It's great to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, I love to be here. But it sounds like you might be stalling on this PSA announcement.
A little bit. A little bit. Okay, folks.
Nick, I knew you'd be on my team.
I need to make a public apology to my good friend Matt Sparazza here, because I don't remember the timeline of this exactly, but I know that I became aware of it after listening to the episode once it came out. That in I think it was our episode on symbolism and liturgy and everything else, Matt used the word enlargen, and I started to laugh because I didn't think that was a real word. Yeah. And folks, I was wrong.
No, you didn't just laugh. You didn't just laugh. You also compared me to a Simpson character.
That's true. I did compare you to Jebediah Springfield, a noble spirit, and Biggins, the smallest man. I did that. That's true. So here's the deal, everybody. I was completely wrong. Here's where we get the word enlargen from Middle English enlargen. It's the
Middle
third
Earth.
person. Yeah. I'm a mess, guys. I'm a mess. Enlargen, verb, third person singular simple present, and it's non-standard, at least to enlarge. So
yes,
it's non-standard, but it's still a real word. And I was wrong. And Matt, I apologize for making fun of you. I apologize for comparing you to Jebediah Springfield, and I apologize for correcting grammar that didn't need to be corrected. Yeah. You were right. I was wrong, and I will never again question your judgment.
Well, don't go that far, but I'll let the editor know that he shouldn't put the booze underneath your apology.
You're the editor, right?
Boo.
Anyway.
Well, now that's over with, I forgive you, Father Sam.
Your mercy
Nick.
knows no bounds.
Yes, yeah. Don't go that far either. I'm trying. That's kind of why we have Nick on the show. I need to learn that. But Nick, I'm glad that you're here. I'm really looking forward to talking about your time with the CP MAP program and then how you ended up in your ministry. But before we get into the details of it, just tell us about yourself, right? Like, where are you from? How did you get to CP MAP? And,
Yeah, so I'm a husband and father, first and foremost, and I'm from the Ohio area, Dayton, Ohio, specifically. And,
okay, yeah.
I spent some time working in youth ministry prior to jumping into the Catholic Psych program, but there was a time frame in youth ministry where I was really challenged to really think about, like, how am I using my gifts? Am I using them well? Mm-hmm. And that's what ultimately led to discerning the CP MAP program. So, yeah, I grew up small farm town, Ohio. My dad was an electrician, so that was definitely a different career path, just choosing ministry
Sure.
in general, but then to go into counseling or a counseling-esque field, right? Like that's another jungle too.
So I admit I've seen a YouTube video that you made called something about the promo section changed your life or something like that. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And I found I was impressed with the story, if I'm being honest with you. So I want you to tell us that story, and then I'll tell you which part I was impressed by.
All right, sounds good. I have suspicions on what part you might be impressed on. I mean, like the first time I encountered Catholic Psych stuff goes back to when I was in my undergrad, and I was looking at counseling schools and whatnot, and Catholic Psych came up as one of the first things you search when you search Catholic psychology. And yeah, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I must have started like looking more into them and get on their email list. But then I kind of like dropped it. Like these are like people who are already doing it. They're not really training people to do it at this point. And so then went into ministry, and yeah, it was like 3 or 4 years into ministry. I was like going through typical ministry stuff, like where some stuff worked, some stuff didn't, and like started feeling a pulling on my heart to look for other things. And that's when I got this email in my promotion section, where I was like hanging out, doing my business, and because that's where you check your promotion section if you're gonna check it, right? Like, there's no other place, no other time that you really check that. At least that's the only time that I've checked that in my life. And that's when I caught this Catholic Psych email about we're doing mentorship. We're launching a mentorship program. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And what was it? Yeah, it was like all centered on John Paul II's personalism. And like, you know, from the very beginning of my life, I've been a big fan, not beginning of my life, somewhere in my life, I became a big fan of John Paul II's philosophy teaching. And yeah, I talked to my wife after that, and I'm like, hey, wife, do you want to go sell our house so we can afford this program? Like, go move to a bungalow, and we'll jump into this program. And she's like, haha, that's funny. I'm always pitching her like crazy ideas. I talked to Dr. Greg about this in a podcast that I did with him recently. I'm like, yeah, like crazy ideas like Yargen Bargain, which is my idea for a pirate-themed thrift store. And he's like, yeah, that's just another crazy idea. That's what my wife was thinking. This whole Catholic Psych thing's like, that's funny. Like let's come back to reality. But then like a week later, I'm like, hey, I was actually kind of serious about that. Yeah, now, a pirate-themed thrift store.
Do you mean like pirate ARG or pirate like Pittsburgh Pirates?
The pirate themed thrift store was definitely like the ARG pirate. Right?
Okay.
Yargen Bargain. You know,
yeah. That makes sense. I figured you're in Ohio. You could potentially be close enough to Pittsburgh. My wife is from Pittsburgh, so I'm a New York Yankee fan converted to a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. So what I did is I gave up the single best, baseball team in history in terms of success for the worst baseball team in history.
Yeah. I saw something recently.
Right there.
I saw something. It was like a play set of Pittsburgh, and they've got Three Rivers Stadium there, and the Pirates on the scoreboard were losing 12-0. It was like a play set made for children, and they set it up that way. That's insane. I love it.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, I'll give you a brief tangent here. The not to interrupt your story, Nick, but I think this story's funny. My wife and I got married in Pittsburgh, and the week that we got married, the Yankees were in Pittsburgh playing the Pirates, and so we went to one of the 2 or 3 games they played in the small series. And the evening before we went, the Pirates absolutely slapped the Yankees. They just destroyed them. And then the game we went to, the Yankees were mad. And they won like 16-0, and they hit like 8 home runs, 2 grand slams. and my whole family was there taunting me the entire game. I think they hit the first grand slam in like the first inning. It was very funny. Anyway, so you wanted to pitch the crazy idea of a pirate themed thrift store, but not the baseball kind. That's where I interrupted you.
Right. Yeah. That's just like one of the crazy ideas that my mind comes up with.
Fair enough.
It's like what my wife thought the whole Catholic Psych program was, like this crazy idea.
Right.
This, like you're
to
gonna
be ignored, maybe.
You're gonna. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like we're not gonna like. That's a fun thought experiment, but we're not actually gonna like do anything with that, right?
I love it. That's a fun thought experiment.
Yeah.
I
But it was like really humbling to go back to. Oh, go ahead, Father.
Well, I was gonna say I like that yours came through through just a promo and like happening to read the promo email, because Dr. Greg and I had conversations about this program for like I think 2 years before he finally launched it, and he was telling me about it. He's got all these ideas, and I'm like, I don't understand any of that. That makes no sense to me. That sounds crazy. And then he finally does, and he's like, "You want to do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. So I like, because everybody who comes to the CP map, which we should make sure that we define for people who haven't listened to our episode from the past with Dr. Greg Bottaro, the CP map is the Catholic Psych model of applied personalism, and the Catholic Psych Institute offers a certification in this particular method to help to accompany people through their various needs and challenges to help them to grow into the most integrated person they can possibly be, rooted, as Nick said, very much in the personalism of Pope St. John Paul II and his theology of the body. Along with like authentically Catholic principles and the best in the psychological sciences. So everybody who's been certified, and we've got this kind of cool community that it's really been fun to get to know people who have gone through the certification. The diversity of backgrounds is amazing. We've got a few priests. We've got like laymen and fathers like Nick. We've got all these different folks, and then what they're doing with that is so powerful. So after your wife agreed to let you suspend income so that you could be a student, so you could do this, like, what was it that really grabbed your attention in the certification, and then like helped you in your prayer too?
Yeah, so I'd already been going to classes at Holy Apostles College and Seminary, online through them, to study pastoral counseling, and I was maybe 3 classes in, already kind of thinking about like this route of like, how can I help guys particularly become who God's created them to be, and like I kind of had this vision of walking with men through the struggles of porn addiction, because it's something that's affected my life, and then it was also something that, as a youth minister, as an employee of a parish, like, you know, every guy, or every other guy, like, was struggling with that, and I'm like, I want to do something about that. And this program the Catholic Psych program was like, we're equipping you to walk with people, right, and not just to see kind of like a surface level understanding of the person, but a really deep understanding of what makes us human. And I'm like, this could be something right here. Like, also Dr. Greg was really upfront about like, hey, I want to help you succeed. I want to help you start a practice. I want to help you like dive into what it is that you're passionate about. And I'm like, that's great. Like, the program I'm going through is like, here at the end of it, it's like, it's a degree, and it's a pastoral counseling degree at that. And so it's like, it's not like really much ground to build off of, where Dr. Greg was really like, we want to equip you. And then also like on the other side of it too, like there's the aspect of learning to be just a better man and husband to my wife and father to my sons that Dr. Greg was talking about. Like, if in the town hall that he did, pitching this thing, he's like, this is going to help you lead your family. This is going to help you become more of a gift. And I'm like, that's really attractive. Even if the career thing doesn't pan out or God calls me elsewhere, like I want to be better as a man, as a husband. So those were the attractive features of the program for sure.
So here's the list of things I was impressed by. That you've opened the promo section of your email more than 0 times. Yeah. I was impressed by your wife, that she took you seriously the second time. I was impressed that you quit your program, because that's gutsy. And then I was impressed by the pirate store. And so those 4 things, those 4 things caught my attention.
The most important things, really.
Yeah. I was clearly paying attention to this story. So
there's something that jumps out to me here,
Father.
which is that you talked about this with your wife in pretty great detail. That you made sure that this was something that was not just like, I want to do this, I'm going to do it. You didn't like ignore her and not bring her into it. what was it like having that conversation? Because something that I do a lot with my couples that are getting married in preparations, obviously we got to talk a lot about communication, and they have to start thinking about how they want their goals to align and how they want to make preparations for this, or just how they're going to adjust when new opportunities come up, like how they're going to have those conversations, because as a married couple, obviously super different than when you're just dating. So what was it like having that conversation? Like, hey, I want to do this program. It's going to require a certain sacrifice from us. What was that discernment process like for the two of you?
Yeah, it was a great question. It was something that, again, yeah, it was soft sell at first with the whole like, this is just another crazy idea. But then
Right.
coming back into it, like, really just opening up the possibility. Like, I think it was like the place that I started talking with her, like, hey, like, this is like something that I think it's possible the Lord could be calling me this. And I'm like, I don't know for sure. Like, this is like a open door, like, that we can pray into together. But then I just started telling her more about the program, and then we watched like the open house together that Dr. Greg put together, and it was like definitely one conversation. Hey, I'm kind of serious about this, and then that led to a series of a lot of other conversations about like dreaming and what could be possible. And I love my wife, and I love her pragmaticness. We both come from like German farm town, and so high levels of pragmatic nature for both of us. But she keeps a lot of the crazy thoughts that I have tethered, and like grounded in reality. And so my job is to then push her into the realm of like what's possible, like the dreams. And in that way, I love our relationship because it's a lot of back and forth as far as like, okay, like let's really look at like what could this cool, exciting new idea be, but then how are we actually living that out in practicality? And these conversations were much like that, like where they're back and forth, and we flipped the script a little bit on the masculine, feminine traits of like her being more of the like listening, like less talking when we're talking, and I'm like blabbing. Get the gift of blab from my dad. So, and so the whole time, so she's just really receptive to the idea and didn't shoot it down right away. And was just open. She wasn't like particularly like, yeah, this sounds awesome. Like, let's jump in as soon as I said I'm serious about it.
Right.
But just a spirit of openness on her part. And then just both of us like really listening. And then some generosity from like family members too, who, supported us along the way. And
So maybe we do a little Catholic Psych language here. So what was that experience like? What did it feel like relationally to have that to have that kind of support?
Sure. Yeah, throwing out some process comments over here. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was great. Like to have support from my wife and from family members. I think they didn't really understand like they don't understand like the this is kind of a career shift like idea. They didn't know what Catholic Psych was. A lot of people didn't know like what this whole mentorship thing was because it was so new. And like for me, I'm like, I don't know exactly what it is either. I don't know how to communicate this. Is this counseling? Is this therapy? Is this something different? Is it all of the above? Right? Like what is it that I'm being trained in? But to have that support was great because it was just like, makes anytime you have support, it makes like making a jump a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So given that those three questions of is it therapy, is it spiritual direction, is it psychology, whatever. For someone who's listening to this, right? Because you talked about how you specifically wanted to work with, guys with porn addiction, but I'm going out on a limb here and saying that that's not the only thing you address. With those who work with you or who would want to work with you, right? So how did Catholic Psych prepare you to work with men, right? Like what did you learn? And then what are the issues men come to you usually with, right? Like where's your area of expertise, if you will?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's just like with Catholic Psych, you get like this really beautiful blueprint of what the human person is. And as a guy, especially coming from kind of like an intellectual prowess background, my dad was in a blue collar job, and you put the pieces together, and then it made sense of it. You fix the problem, right? Having a blueprint, having something to come back to, is really, really helpful. And that's maybe the thing that was the most attractive in learning this program compared to a secular model. I got like a few buddies who are getting trained as counselors right now, and it's like this meandering of sorts of, they're throwing so many different like therapy models, different things at you that they're like, hey, okay, then good luck, put it together.
Right. So there's more because there's so many options. I mean, and the other thing is, it seems to me that not all of those options would actually be true. Right? Like if they're so diverse, then they might not actually be fruitful. So what is the blueprint? Right? We said, you said, John Paul II's personalism. What is that? Yeah.
So it comes back to very basically, like, we're made for relationship, broken relationship and healed in relationship. That's kind of like the easiest synopsis of John Paul II's personalism and the blueprint, which we learned through Catholic Psych. It's and that's something that's resonated with my heart since I was young, right? As a 17-year-old, struggling with a porn addiction myself, like encountering John Paul II's theology of the body in that moment, where he's like, it's all about relationship. It's all about love. And like, your desire for sex points to that. And it's good, right? Like that's what was super attractive to me then. Super attractive to me now is that everything about the way that we were created makes sense as it lines up to God's plan for us and relationship. And that's where we're ultimately headed, is like this path towards heaven, towards the ultimate relationship with God. And working with men, that becomes really difficult because we like to be isolated as men. Sometimes we like to like draw away to really be in solitude. And it can be scary to think about drawing into relationship. We have this almost concupiscence, or like this repulsion to wanting to draw close to others, because it's like, am I risking something here? Am I losing my own identity, my own individuality in entering into this relationship in some sort of way? Or like, to kind of put it in more simple terms, it's like, am I going to be able to do what I want to do? Right. If I get married, if I become a husband and father, like, am I actually going to be able to do what I want to do? And like, the hard truth of it is, like, a lot of times, probably not. Like I don't want to change dirty diapers. I don't want to like take out the trash. I don't like, there's a lot of things that I don't want to do, but it's worth doing all those things if it means I'm able to be more of self-gift and like into relationship with my wife, my kids, and those around me.
That's a great point. Like, first of all, Nick, thank you for taking the question on what is John Paul II's personalism, so that I didn't have to. I appreciate that. You're Johnny on the spot with that. That's fantastic. But this idea of like, we're made for relationship, we're healed in relationship, and then that tendency that men in particular have towards that isolation, and isolation, I think, subconsciously, like sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing it, but go all the way back to the beginning, and that's what we see Adam doing. The minute God says, "Where are you?" He's hiding, and when God asks him why he's done this, he says, "The woman you put here with me made me do it." So he points the finger at her. So he distances himself from Eve, and at the same time he blames God. He's like, "You put her here. It's your fault that she was here in the first place." So he distances himself from God. He doesn't even know what the consequences of sin are yet. He hasn't even been told what this is going to require. But he knows that something's off, and so he's trying to distance everything from himself, just to like give himself that cushion. And I think we all have that tendency, men in particular have that tendency to just try to make ourselves safe in some way. And the easiest way is to not have too much in the way of relationship. The easiest way is to like, I'm going to be my own man. I'm going to keep my own counsel. I'm going to do my own thing without having to get overly involved in other people. So, I mean, maybe just with that, I would see like immediately a connection to that place where you understood that there's a need, especially for men who are struggling with pornography, that there's a need to really help them and to get them through that. So how do you help guys who are in the throes of that kind of an addiction or struggling with that sin to understand the importance of authentic relationship?
Yeah. It all comes back to that's what it's about. I think when we start to struggle with that addiction, porn, or any sexual addiction, we can make the mistake, like, this is about the porn. This is about the sex. In our minds, it's like, if I can just like cut that out, if I can just get rid of it, like I'll be better. Right. But it's really not about that. Like, it's about like some sort of intimacy and relationship wound that you're coping with. And that's the place that I start with guys, for two reasons. Like, one, it's like, let's point to the actual problem here. Like, let's actually like look at, right now you got the wool kind of pulled over your eyes,
Right.
and we can't really see what's going on.
Right.
So
You don't cover
problem?
a stab wound with a Band-Aid.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Great analogy. It's like, yeah, you're bleeding out. It's like, I'm fine. Right. Like, you just got a Band-Aid over it. It's, and so like, if you can actually point to that and be like, yeah, you're bleeding out. Like, and this is why, that's huge. But then it's also to like come in with empathy and like understanding. I feel like it's so easy to start beating ourselves up, to thinking we're a terrible human being, to get stuck in shame, to feel like no one else, if somebody sees this, like they're not going to accept me. Like if my wife finds out, like it's done. Like I'm so screwed. Right. To actually go in there and be like, no, it makes sense. Like, you weren't supposed to understand how to navigate this. Like, we all have mobile porn theaters in our pockets. Like, you weren't supposed to figure it out by yourself. And that's the sad reality, is like, you're told that you need to figure this out by yourself. That, because you found this coping mechanisms, you're somehow worse because, starting with that place of empathy, it's like, no, like, let's pause and really look at what happened. There was something that you started to cope from when you started to look at this porn. That's the real issue. And empathy in that area is always like this place to start opening up doors to see, like, okay, what is actually going on deeper here? And if you can get to that deeper place, then that's where the real work of healing starts.
Do you find as you get guys to identify what that particular relational thing is, I suffered in this relationship, I was dating somebody and this is what was happening, or in this area of my life I never felt like anybody was with me, anybody was supporting me, and porn kind of presented itself as just an easy way to feel something. Do you find that getting them into that relational space helps them to start to work through a little bit more what's going on, and then maybe makes the behavior, looking at pornography, like makes that less attractive for them?
Yeah, it definitely could, start to meet some of those relational intimacy wounds that haven't been met before. It gives people like a taste of the thing that their heart's really longing for, but they've been going to porn, which, makes it complicated, because like, it's like when you see the nature of porn or anything related to sex, it's like, I really just want a relationship with a woman. Like, that's going to fix my problems. But it's like, we got to come back to just basic need in general. Like, you need relationship,
right?
Period. And that's really hard for guys to kind of see and own. It's like, oh, like, actually being alone all the time is really detrimental to this porn thing, or, whatever the case may be. Yeah, right. Yeah. There's so many triggers that are related to, interpersonal relationships that, what you're saying, Father Sam, it's like when you enter into that relational sphere, that dynamic with somebody, it immediately starts to help. But then also kind of gives you this picture of what it can look like, and then like how you've been living. And when they're like right next to each other, it's a lot easier to see, like, okay, there's something off here about the way that I was living. So
what's the, obviously like not asking you to share anybody's private information. But what's the wound that's most commonly behind the porn addiction? Because if it, I know that the answer is the relationship, but like, is it men have bad relationships with their father? Is it that men have bad relationships with women? You know, like what's the core of it?
Yeah, I think it's like any of the above. You know, it could be related to like that's like my story is like related to a father wound. It's nothing was good enough. Growing up, I always came back to this household of that's like you did a good job, but you could do better, right? Let's make this more efficient. I always love you, but like I need you to do this thing better. Those were kind of the same messages I got through all of growing up, and in that way, and I feel like a lot of guys kind of get that message too, where you can do better, and then you know, coupled with your worth is tied to what you achieve, what you do, how much money you make. It can be really easy to fall in the slip of feeling inadequate. And so what do? Easy place to turn to porn, where you feel totally adequate. I mean, for, you know, the time that you're looking at porn, and then you feel like afterwards. I don't know if we're supposed to.
That's okay.
Is this explicit podcast or
not? We'll beep it.
Yeah, we can
we'll beep it. Okay.
For the radio edit, you know.
If I could request a rubber duck sound, that would be
rubber duck.
That'd be nice. Yeah. I just but it's like what the work with the men that I work with, like we have to talk about real stuff, and that's where my mind started to go there. It's like, because it's like you feel so empty afterwards.
Right.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's one common thing that a lot of guys struggle with, is that inadequacy. But then loneliness and purposelessness are both huge ones too. So
Yeah.
How many of the guys that come to you have it's a twofold question. How many of them is this like super buried? You know what I mean? That like they have no idea that this is what's actually going on. But on the like contrary side to that, how many of them when you articulate something like what you just did, that it clicks immediately and it's like a huge turning point? You know, because I could see both being true.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of guys don't want to see that deeper connection, that deeper need for a relationship, and maybe don't want to is not quite the right terms. Like I think they do want to,
right? Like subconsciously they repress it, they suppress it, I guess.
Yeah, and why? It's because like they're probably not only using like porn to cope with, but they're using all sorts of different defense mechanisms to keep everything kind of arm's length away in life. Like I don't really want to feel. I really don't want to like turn on those emotions, because that sounds bad. Like that sounds like it's gonna hurt. It sounds like it's going to really it's not gonna help me, right, to turn on those emotions. And then I come in and like that's what we need to do. and then you know, those cases take a little bit longer, because it's like I got to present a case. I got to present a reason why it's okay, it's safe to bring those emotions in here, and why it's actually going to lead to the healing that they're looking for. Whereas like some of the cases you're saying, like, yeah, as soon as you present it, it's like, oh yeah, that's it. Like that's right. What I'm missing.
Yeah. I feel like for a lot of the guys that I'll talk to who are struggling with something like this, they across the board, they understand that the behavior is problematic, that there's something sinful, there's something unvirtuous, there's something that's deeply wrong with pornography. They know it, and they're frustrated because they can't figure out why they keep going back to it. And so that struggles. I don't know why I'm doing this. I can't control. I feel like I'm not in control. And I mean, that's often actually a great sign of the presence of something that's on the level of addiction, right? I don't feel like I have any control. And then some of them are able to make the connection coming into it. I realize that I've struggled in this kind of relationship. So here's where there's a struggle. But then there's also this other element where they might not realize some of the places where that relationship is, or those relational dynamics rather, are affecting them and kind of leading them on this path. It's like they might not realize that relationship with parents can have an enormous impact on that. They might think, yeah, in past dating relationships or something, or I'm feeling really lonely, so I'm just looking for this. But why are you feeling lonely, or why did that relationship go this way? And then they start going, oh yeah, and they start digging. And I don't know, have you found this, Nick? Like, something that I've come across a few times in working with people is a hesitancy, like as they start recognizing where some of these wounds are from. There's also this. It's actually, I think it's really beautiful because they don't want to blame anyone. They want to be responsible.
Right.
Like, people want to be responsible for their own crap. Like, this is on me. This isn't on anybody else. So I don't want to act like I'm blaming people. And I think in general, that's often the fear in somebody taking up therapy, right? If I go to therapy, they're just going to tell me that my father didn't hug me enough. Or if I go to therapy, they're going to tell me that I just have this thing where, yeah, it's because somehow it's my parents' fault. And it's like, I love my parents. I think my parents did a great job. And so there's a hesitancy. I've even experienced this myself. Like, I don't want to blame other people. I want to blame myself. But then to realize that sometimes there are faults in the relationship. There are places where there's a weakness, or where something didn't go quite right in the context of this relationship that might have been a very, very good relationship overall. But this one little thing still needs to be healed. So I'm still trying to figure this out. So you're gonna process this with me and help me out here, I hope. Like,
Sounds like a plan.
how do you?
It seems like I'm the only one not adequately prepared to help anyone process.
No,
here.
but you I think, Matt, you have good gifts that you can bring also, like vocabulary. Even
Yeah. Speaking of which, sorry for shaming you for making you apologize before.
You did the right thing. I needed that needed to happen. I was wrong. I was just completely wrong. Okay, but in that context, like, I want to help people understand. Just talking about it doesn't mean you're blaming anybody, and it's not about pointing a finger of blame at this individual or this person or anything like that. It's just identifying what is. But getting people to that sort of objective stance is sometimes a real journey. Like, what do you find is the best way to get them to that objective position where they can just say, this is what happened, full stop, no judgment on anything?
Yeah. I think at some point, almost every person I've walked with the exception of one or two people, have had that hesitancy where it's like, I don't want to blame anyone here. And different people have different thresholds. You know, some people are easy to jump in and let's look at this objectively, but always kind of hit a wall at some point. And the way that I like to phrase it and come back to when we hit that wall is looking at the school of love. Like, we all come from imperfect schools of love. Unless Jesus was your brother, Mary was your mom, Joseph was your dad, right? Like, your school of love was broken to some degree. Like, there's some inadequacy that you've learned from that school of love. And that's what I want to point to. That's what we want to look at. Like, where have you learned something that isn't quite right about relationship, that we can come back and just point to that? Not, to your point, Father Sam, it's like people come in so hesitant looking at modern psychology, and like, I don't want to blame people. I've seen that. I've seen the blame game thrown out there, and then people put up these ridiculous boundaries and barriers that, boundaries are good, but some people put them up in improper positions and like cut off relationships entirely. And it's just like, no, like that's not what we're supposed to be doing here. Like, it's not this blame game where we don't take ownership over our stuff. Other people have hurt you. Absolutely. Right. Like, that's something that we should acknowledge. But we still have a part to play in this. And speaking into that truth, it's like, like, we can look at the inadequate love that you've received and see, where's the room to prove.
I mean, I think also realizing that, like, right? Like people that I love have hurt me. People that I don't love have hurt me. I know I'm supposed to love everybody, but you know.
Hey man, in our humanity, right?
Yeah. But also I've hurt people too, right? So like, I imagine that there's also an amount of like forgiveness that you can offer yourself, right? Because the thing is, because I was thinking about this earlier, how difficult, and really the both of you can speak to it, and potentially in different capacities. Insofar as Father Sam, you offer people sacramental confession as well, you know. But one of the reasons porn is so like hard to navigate is because it's sinful. Like it's not just that I've done something wrong, and potentially like, I mean, I think especially within the context of marriage, it's like, you know, it's something seriously wrong. I mean, it's seriously wrong before, but there's that extra element too. Now you've kind of betrayed someone as well. But also in a sense, like you're betraying yourself and you're betraying God. So like there's that shame is built so high, right? So like, how do you lead people into forgiveness? Recognizing those two elements, right? Like, you know, that you can't hear people's confession over the app Catholic Psych uses, no matter how badly you want to, Nick. But you know what I mean? Like, so what's that journey like? How do you lead people to forgiving themselves and also seeking forgiveness? And you know,
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd be really curious to hear your take on that, Father Sam, just from like the confessional standpoint.
Yeah. I think in the sacrament, when the sin of pornography is brought up, first of all, it's really common. And it's a hard thing. You can feel the burden that the person is carrying. I think what's challenging in the context of the confessional is that you can't really go into all the relational depth and healing that needs to take place. You can only encourage somebody to seek out further direction, right? Like they come to confession because they know that they've fallen in sin and they want that sacramental grace to overcome. You can give them some advice. You can try to point them to a resource, but the context there is it's really about helping them through the sin, and to find God's mercy, and to be reminded that they are still capable of receiving mercy, and that God still wants them to receive mercy. Because I think the other thing that comes with with all sin, the shame that comes because I've committed this or that sin, there also starts to be this sort of voice whispering in the heart, you don't deserve anything. You don't deserve mercy. You don't deserve goodness. And that's the case for a lot of different things. If somebody's really gotten lost in alcohol or drugs, part of what keeps them in the throes of that addiction is that they don't believe that they deserve sobriety, or that they're good enough to be forgiven by their family, that they've ruined everything. So they just kind of stay where they are because you've already messed everything up. You can't possibly make it any worse. There's just this thought like, I was really nasty to my friend. Had a fight with my friend. Well, I guess that friendship's over because I had that fight. And like, to remind them, no, you can still come back from this. You can still heal. That's the first thing in the confessional, that you're trying to help somebody who's bringing their sin to God. You're trying to help them understand God wants you to come back, and he's going to give you that grace that you need. But getting at some of the deeper causes, like, why is it that you're attracted to this? That's really hard to do in the context of confession. You almost have to like point people to some of the resources that are out there, or encourage them, like, let's meet and talk for some spiritual direction to talk about this at a deeper level, because just context doesn't allow for much more than that, especially if it's like a busy day in the confessional. You know, you got a line. You can, like, I know you're here to ask for God's forgiveness. That's the most important thing. I'm going to help you prioritize that. I'm not going to make you feel bad for making other people wait by asking deep questions about all the other stuff going on in your life that needs healing. But I also want you to know there's deeper stuff in your life that needs healing. And trying to help them in that direction, that's not always easy. What, Nick, do you have any resources that you give to guys to use, like outside of the context of a mentorship relationship or a counseling relationship?
Yeah. I don't like throw a ton of resources out there to guys. I mean, Covenant Eyes is great for setting up filters and they have like a great resource library on learning more about the struggle of porn addiction. And then Jim O'Day runs Integrity Restored. He has a podcast out there that's quality, like stories about guys overcoming porn. And so I'll throw those kind of resources out there to guys. A lot of guys that I work with, they come from a workshop that I put together on how to start to think about overcoming porn. And I kind of present a threefold model or tool to use. It's really just, stealing from the Catholic Psych program, which they stole from Ignatius, right? The awareness, understanding, and action. So really the same kind of mindset with porn addiction. It's like, how are we growing an awareness of this problem, which leads to understanding it, and then leads to us taking action. And you can look at that both on like the micro, the daily aspect of struggling with this, and then the macro too, like leading to like the bigger freedom. So I don't try to overwhelm the guys with like too many resources. I mean, resources are great, but it's like I use an analogy of like a castle, again stealing from Ignatius, but like it's when the enemy tries to attack us at our weakest points, and he'll look for that hole in the castle, the wall of the castle, let's say, to break in and to infiltrate the man and the man's heart. The castle wall, in my opinion, is all of the behavioral things that we put up to stop the enemy, the filters, the accountability partners, XYZ that tries to keep us from, or keep the enemy out of the wall. My question is like, what happens when you get behind the wall? Like, are the men behind the wall able to fight with the enemy, able to engage with the enemy? Yeah. And that's where I really want to help guys develop those tools, like to see, okay, what's going on behind this.
I'm glad you brought that up. That gives me an idea for maybe a simple thing that can be in the confessional, like just that reminder to the guy who's confessing pornography, like the enemy attacks us at our weakest point. Here's your assignment for your prayer. It's not your penance, but I just want you to think about this and ask God to give you some insight into what is your weakest point and where's that come from? Is that weakest point just a question of like time of day, so really practical, or is that weakest point like a place where your heart is deeply wounded, and so you're looking to heal that wound through pornography? Like, what's that weakest point for you? And let's pray to ask the Lord to show that to you so that you can start to work on that weakest point, not just on addressing the way that you're trying to meet the weakest need or the way that the enemy is attacking at the weakest point. Like, let's try to really heal the weakest point. And that can be done really quickly. I don't need a long counseling session to talk to them about that. That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Nick. Oh, awesome.
Well, awesome. I think that's like the battle with like working with anyone who's trying to overcome an addiction, or anyone in like the Catholic Psych mentoring, is like, how can we empower people to start to do the work themselves? Like that's, as men, we can feel beaten down and like we can't do it. It's like, no, like I'm here to say like you can do this. Like, overcoming porn is 100% possible. Like, and like I want to give you the tools to make that possible. So yeah, that's great. That's great to use like just a little, like here's an exercise. Go do some exploring.
Yeah. So you mentioned the like a podcast from Integrity Restored that you might recommend to guys, and we haven't had a chance yet to talk about your podcast. So tell us about the Hey Brother podcast and what you're doing with that.
Yeah. So the Hey Brother podcast was, I don't know where the impetus of it exactly came. A buddy of mine said he takes credit for it, and when we start to make big bucks, he wants in. We were having a beer at like a Roosters. I don't know if you guys have Roosters out in Connecticut. We don't. It's like a wing place. So we were having a beer there, and my biological brother Mitch, and I were sitting there with a few friends we have here in the town that we live in, and me and my brother Mitch were talking. Like, sometimes it feels like maybe we're a little cliquey. Like we like don't let people like in, and our friend like really affirmed that. He's like, no, like you guys do a good job of like sharing your brotherhood with us in like the men's group that we belong to. And that's kind of the hope with the Hey Brother podcast is to share something that me and him have been given and like we're really blessed with. We're 14 months apart, and that came with a lot of fighting through growing up, but then developed into like a really beautiful brotherhood and friendship. We're pretty much right at neck and neck with like stage of life, both married, both have a couple kids. And so we get to share a lot of life together. And that's something that I want to let guys know it's possible to have good brotherhood. And then another aspect of the Hey Brother podcast. So that's like half of it. The other half was interviewing guys and just hearing their stories. Who are they? How has brotherhood impacted them? Where do they want to grow as men? And really like, that's at the heart of brotherhood is like how much are you willing at the heart of any relationship? How much are you willing to let yourself be seen? How much are you willing to let yourself like enter into a relationship? Because that is directly proportional to the depth and to the quality of relationship that you're going to have.
Right.
Yeah. How long have you been doing it now? It's still pretty new, huh?
Oh yeah, real new. I've been trying to do so the one episode is the interview, then the other episode is a brother episode with my brother Mitch, and so we've got 10 episodes out. But I started releasing them right before the turn of the new year, and so we've been cooking them out pretty fast, but it's still very, very new. Like I think I've tried to edit it like a different way each time we've released something, and to some mild frustration, but it's been fun. It's been fun getting to know guys and hear their stories.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, podcasts are well there's a lot of do you have another one besides Hey Brother?
Yeah, I did help with where it's on a pause right now, but there's a buddy of mine who runs a ministry called You Are Loved, and I was co-hosting a podcast with him for a little bit.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, there's I think it's a great opportunity like to get guys talking. There's the joke right now that, you know, instead of going to therapy, men start podcasts. But I think there's also a reason that podcasts are really popular with guys. Like they like listening to conversations. They like getting into this idea because it's hard sometimes to have those conversations and to model the behavior. Like this is how to have the conversation. It opens up so many doors. Like for other people, they can start to, maybe I can sit down with my brother, or maybe I can sit down with this guy who I'm good friends with, and we can go have a beer. We can have a conversation. We can do this and actually get into some deep stuff. And there's no reason that I have to pretend to be anything other than authentic.
Yeah.
Like it's okay for me to talk about this. And like, maybe the podcast world right now is teaching us how to have those real conversations, and to just do it honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the encouragement to any guys listening too. It's like don't let this be a substitute. Like go, like you're saying, Father Sam, go actually have that beer. Like it'll change your life. Like quite literally. Like consuming a relationship like this is one thing, but actually like participating in it, like it's wild. It's so life-giving.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sweet. So with your mentorship practice coming out of Catholic Psych, this particular drive towards serving men and helping them recognize some of the challenges. It's one thing, like at the beginning of your Catholic Psych journey, as you're going through the certification program, you kind of go in with a certain mentality. So you recognized in your ministry, there's guys struggling with pornography. There's guys who are feeling kind of distant from things. I went into it thinking about parents in my parish whose kids are dealing with anxiety. I ended up with this desire to help priests to find the help that they need and to help them to get this ongoing formation that would be really useful for them in their parishes. And not that I lost interest in them, but I lost interest in the parents of kids with anxiety. I don't mean that I don't have interest in them, but just like that suddenly wasn't the thing. Like the way that God worked through this certification program for me was to give me a heart for priests. And I wasn't expecting that. So like my primary focus when I do mentorship is for priests to support them and to be a help to them. How did you notice that shifting happening and kind of how have you decided to focus the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was kind of a big circle because it started off with this desire to want to help men, particularly like with porn. But then as I went through the program, it like that dreamer mindset came in, and 10 ideas came out. It was like we could do so much with this. And like some of those ideas, maybe the Lord still uses. Like they're the back seat, and maybe they come out sometime and that's great, praise God, whatever works with that. But it came back to like having some honest conversations with Dr. Greg, where he's like, dude, you gotta pick a lane and like go, like, and like see what the Lord does with that.
Yeah.
And
I think he's trying to do that with me too. He's trying to keep me on like one track for one particular thing, and I'm like, but I want to do this. And he's like, no, stay here.
Yeah. It's so tempted. It's like being tempted with a good idea instead of like the best idea that the Lord's calling you to be. Yeah. And so that's, I mean, like honestly, it was just like it was a lot of ways like a full circle, like just like starting with this desire in my heart, and then kind of like taking a step back and seeing like a bigger picture and seeing like the way the Lord is moving in this, but then really entering back in and seeing, okay, where do you want to take this thing? Like asking myself that question, praying with it, and just coming back to that, like it's a need that I feel like can be better addressed. It's like folks are addressing the porn problem like in a larger capacity than ever's been done before, and not just like the Catholic world. There's something that like I see a lot of Facebook ads for. There's a lady who's in the Mormon church who's like addressing this. There's a lot of Catholic guys, or Christian guys, and like not Catholic guys who are working to address this. But
and it's getting out there too on the secular level. Like people, whether you're religious or not, this is a problem, and it's not good for you. Let's work on it. Yeah,
like the Fight the New Drug or the no fap communities. Like those are both secular organizations that recognize there's something wrong here. And so there's growing like the resistance to this, but it's still like a huge problem. It's like you can never have too many people working in this because it's everywhere.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Like when I did my capstone for Catholic Psych, I was kind of stuck in that. I've got this thing that I really want to do. But then I started seeing all those ideas. So like, kind of like you, I was like, there's like 10, 12 ideas here. So one page of my capstone project was just bullet point ideas for future priests who will do the Catholic Psych Model of Applied Personalism certification. If you're looking for something to try to use this for, think about this. So like I made this huge list, and there's a couple of guys who are students now, priests who are students now, who I know, and I gave them that list. I'm like, if any of these strike you, go ahead, run with it. Like,
right.
And if you don't like any of them, then do whatever you want. I don't care. Just if you think that this would be helpful, like dive in, because there's so much stuff. There's so much that we can do with this. Because at the end of the day, it's all about like healing those relationships, those places where we struggle, those places where we're wounded, and those places that we need to be healed.
Yeah, and that's like applicable across so many contexts, right? It's not just like just this one thing, but it's like everything. You just see life in a more vibrant way when, especially as men, like you turn on that relational aspect of it, or like the emotional aspect of it. It's like, okay, this affects a lot.
Yeah. Nick, where can people find you to connect and to do this?
Yeah, so I've got my own practice in partnership with Catholic Psych called Craft It for More. That the URL is craftitformore.com. And so they can find out my mentorship services there. And then the YouTube handle for Hey Brother is at Hey Brother Podcast, or just type in Hey Brother Podcast on YouTube. I think our search results are okay. So I've been playing with the logo. I'm like, I don't know. Do I put my logo on here? Do I put my face on here? The face isn't like a super like attractive face or logo, but it's like, it's not intimidating, right? Like, okay, this bald guy is like, I can trust him, right? So, so if you see my face pop up, then you're in the right location on YouTube.
Sweet. That's awesome. We'll put the links in the show
Perfect.
notes too, so you can find it.
Yeah.
But Nick, man, thanks so much for making time for this today. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Really
no,
good to be
thank
with
you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was our pleasure.
Thanks for your work. All right. God bless you, Nick. I really like that we get to meet such cool people and talk to them. And I like that we have this opportunity.
I was going to bring up enlarging again.
Fair enough. What else do we need to say? How else can I make my apology more adequate?
I want you to agree to use the word enlarging from this point forward.
Let us enlarge our list of future guests and find other cool
Yes.
people to talk to.
Yes, okay.
Oh,
Now I am satisfied. You use that.
I tend to think I have a good vocabulary.
You do. You have a far more expansive vocabulary
But
than
I
have.
got a little proud. I got a little prideful. A little ahead of myself there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what? It also was a good moment of humility for me. So just as as Joseph told his brothers that they did not send him to Egypt, but God did,
But
so
you
he
were
could
right
bring
the
good
whole
out of
time.
it.
I was wrong.
Yes, and so was Joseph. No, but God, you did not. Where am I going with this?
I don't know.
You did not humiliate me and yourself. God did. What?
Well,
it didn't.
I'm just happy to be God's
The
instrument
analogy
to
didn't
bring
work.
humility to your life. Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we got to have Nick join us today and talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, at the risk of, I was thinking about this the other day, that many of our guests, as it happens, are men. We've interviewed a few women who have written books and things. But we do tend to have, if it's not Renee Day, we do tend to have more guys on the podcast, and that's not intentional. It just happens to be the guests that we're able to arrange to meet. But I've noticed that, number one, and number two, just been thinking about ways that we can, or like kind of what is coming from that. And Nick, I think, is a great example of recognizing this particular need that men have for good fraternity, good community, and that there is something that's kind of missing. Maybe on a secular level, we get a little dismissive sometimes of that. But there's a need, and I'm glad that we're able to have those kinds of conversations. And Nick, I think, just, man, I love what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, right? Like, although admittedly, I hadn't thought about it from the perspective of us interviewing more men than women. Although we have at least one. No, we have two women that are going to be on the show soon. So I don't know what you make of that, Father. But
we're intentionally trying to be more diverse.
Yes. Matt Walsh would be proud.
Yeah.
And if you're a man, you might get that joke. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
And come on, Matt, dig a hole that's deeper. Dig a deeper hole for yourself.
No, it's really, truly, it's never been an intentional thing. It's just that.
No, yeah. But yeah, I think that what Nick is doing is I mean, I think on I guess when I was prepping for this interview, a reaction that I had, not my first reaction, but our reaction was that what he's doing is it's just like plain old obviously good, you know? Like this is a problem. It's a massive problem.
Yeah.
And he is doing something to address it. And you know, and he said like there's a lot of organizations that do it and he's contributing. And what kind of came to my mind is that I have a similar approach to us as a podcast, which is everybody and their mother has a Catholic podcast, you know? but like also there are a lot of Catholics who need to learn more about the faith. You know, and so like if we can contribute, you know, whatever amount that we end up contributing in sum total, it's like that will have been good.
Yeah.
You know, flat out. Like, so I think that what he's doing is it's just that it's good. It's contributing to the good.
Yeah.
You know,
it's funny to use like a very different context. I saw this several years ago. So you have in the summertime, Franciscan University of Steubenville runs these conferences all over the country.
Yeah.
The famous Steubenville conferences.
Yes.
And they've partnered with Lifeteen to reach as many people, as many parishes and everything like that, but also because Lifeteen has tremendous resources. Well, Lifeteen often is partnered up with organizations like Ascension Presents. And so Ascension is also involved in some way. And then Focus will show up and be there and so there's this, they're recognizing the areas where they overlap in terms of their mission and in terms of the stuff that they're doing, but also in terms of the resources that they have that they can share with each other. And so they're using it all together in a very intentional way. But then individually, they still do their own stuff. You know, Lifeteen does its own thing. Ascension does its own thing. Focus does its own thing.
Right.
So they're still doing their own individual things, but they're recognizing that every once in a while there's this place of overlap where they can work together. And I think we've got that opportunity too, to like, there's places where there's overlap. I like that we got to talk to Nick about his podcast a little bit because there's a podcast that's trying to reach a certain type of an audience that's trying to promote something in particular, and that's such a gift, and it's so needed out there. And then there's the stuff that he's doing that's kind of unique in his own mission field,
right?
And then there's the places where he's going to overlap with us, where the work that he does with Catholic Psych, it's supporting what Catholic Psych does, and then there's the individual stuff that he'll do as he's involved in ministry and things. I think there's just such a value in all that. That's really good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like that attitude fosters the antidote to jealousy, right? Where it's like, I mean, and you know, you've said it in terms of gifts and talents, where it's like, I can't do the thing Matt does, and Matt can't do the thing I do, and praise God for that, right? And so it's like, what's the reaction what's the proper reaction? What's the integrated reaction? What's the reaction John Paul II would have if he applied personalism to this problem? It would be, praise God that Nick Clune's got this podcast and people listen to that. And praise God we have a podcast and people listen to that. Right. And if someone decides to listen to Nick Clune's Hey Brother podcast, which they should, praise God. And if someone decides to listen to Dr. Greg Bottaro's Being Human podcast featuring Father Sam Kachuba, praise God. And if
I was on like once. I don't think that counts as featuring.
Once was enough. But if someone decides to listen to Restless, praise God. Notice it was a little difficult to say that one. No. I was thinking we didn't shout out Restless in this podcast. There it is. There it is.
All right, we didn't miss it. That's good.
Our obligated shout out, Father Joseph Gill.
No, you're right. To be able to rejoice in the gifts of another is a hugely important thing. And, you know, which
I'm going to build you up. That's a lesson I learned from you.
Oh, thanks.
You've said it enough times on this podcast. But seriously, like that's a lesson I think that I've learned from you.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a lesson that I've learned through some real struggle, that it can't always be about me and me getting what I want or like being the first guy out there. On the contrary, like sometimes it's really important to step back and recognize the gifts of another. And I think it started to come into the sharpest focus when I was in my theological studies in seminary. I was suddenly surrounded by these guys who were immensely talented and overqualified for everything. And I felt like very small, and to be able to admire their gifts and then to find out that some of them admired gifts that I had kind of blew my mind. and then subsequently to be able to talk to guys and to kind of continue those friendships. Like a couple years ago, we had our class reunion, and just getting together and seeing what they're doing and where they're at was like, this is awesome. These guys are using these great gifts that they have to do stuff that's really meaningful. And you just realize, for whatever rivalries I might have cultivated in my own heart about these guys, I don't want that anymore. Like, I despise that rivalry now. All I want is to see those guys succeed, and like it's just so much better that way.
Yeah.
And then
right.
every once in a while, though, you'll look and go, yeah, I could have done that better. You know, like if I'm at a mass, like I'll hear a priest homily and I'll be like, yeah, I could have done better than that. I would have handled this differently. You know, I know.
Remember what you said at the first part of this comment about despising the rivalry.
Yeah, but like sometimes it's just an acknowledgement of fact. Like, I could have done better, but this was the one who did it, and you know what? God's going to work through that somehow. I had this 2 weeks ago.
Somehow.
No, 2 weeks ago though.
I don't ask me how. I don't know.
This was a great thing. 2 weeks ago, I was standing at the side door of the church after mass, which meant that I did not say the mass. Lady walked out and she said, "Father, thanks so much. It was very inspiring today. Really appreciate your homily," and walked away. I'm like, I didn't give the homily. She was inspired by a different priest, by Father Brendan, my associate, who gave a very inspiring homily. I love the man. He and I look nothing alike. He is clean shaven and cherubic, and I have a giant mangy beard. You know, and I've been this woman's pastor.
You look like the mascot for Nick's Pirate Store.
I've been this nice woman's pastor for 10 years, and she didn't realize that I didn't say anything to her that day. It was beautiful. It's like, you know what? This is absolutely not about me. Yeah. And thank God for that. Right?
Yeah. And you don't look like a pirate. I was just trying to get you to laugh.
No, I don't. It's true.
Humility.
I'm far too put together to look like a pirate, and
that's for sure.
Yeah, I lack a hook hand. You know, I can make a hook with
and
my
an eye
finger.
patch.
Yeah.
You know.
Speaking of which, I need to go out and buy that wig that we've been talking about.
Yes, the ecclesiologist toupee.
All right, we got to stop. That's too much. Thanks, man. Good talking to you, man.
I will talk to you next week.
See you soon.
Peace.
Thanks for watching today's video. Let us know what you thought down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.